Good morning, everyone. Today, our team will be presenting our strategic analysis of Blue Bird Corporation. Blue Bird is one of the leading school bus manufacturers in North America and has been a major player in the student transportation industry for nearly a century. Throughout this presentation, we will analyze the company's current strategy, financial performance, external and internal environments, key challenges, and recommendations for future growth. We'll also evaluate Blue Bird's competitive position using several strategic management frameworks. Blue Bird Corporation was founded in 1927 and specializes in the design, manufacture, and sale of school buses. The company serves school districts, contractors, and government agencies throughout North America and is well known for its focus on safety, reliability, and innovation in student transportation. Today, Blue Bird holds a leading position in the school bus industry and has built a strong reputation through more than 95 years of manufacturing experience. The company's current strategy focuses on differentiation by offering high-quality buses with advanced safety features, strong service support, and a broad range of alternative fuel options. A major part of Blue Bird's strategy is investing in electric, propane, and low-emission transportation solutions. As school districts increasingly prioritize sustainability and environmental goals, Blue Bird has positioned itself as a leader in alternative fuel school buses by combining innovation, strong customer relationships, and a trusted brand reputation. The company aims to maintain its market leadership while taking advantage of growing demand for cleaner transportation technologies.
Blue Bird's fiscal year 2025 revenue grew 9.9% to $1.48 billion. Its adjusted EBITDA margin of 15% roughly significantly outperforms the Rev Group at about 9.3%. In both Thomas Built and IC Bus companies are parent companies of each other. Being a focused, pure play school bus manufacturer gives Blue Bird's pricing power and operational strength its larger, diversified rivals they cannot match. They have a hard time with the implementation of their strategy that we as Blue Bird have the access to, and the funding is in power to the Blue Bird Bus Co.
Hi, I'm Remington, and I'll be sharing our external and internal analysis. To start with, here's our pestle model, and I think our most notable factors right now are the technological and environmental factors. Technology in the EV bus efforts is growing rapidly, and constant improvements are currently being made to the technology, especially with batteries and what they're capable of. And I believe this goes hand in hand with the environmental factor, since local and federal governments are working towards goals of carbon neutrality, and school districts are even already accelerating their fleet electrification efforts. So these are two big external drivers right now, are the technology and environmental efforts. And then here's our 5 forces analysis, and I'll just share a couple of strengths and weaknesses from that. One strength is the government's growing investment in clean transportation. Some examples of this are the $5 billion EPA Clean School Bus Program, which was implemented in 2022, and that's currently running through the end of this year. And then also the $80 million federal grant that was offered to Blue Bird in 2024. While different administrations can affect the scale at which these clean transportation efforts are happening, then overall this can be a strength year over year for Blue Bird. However, one weakness right now is increasing battery, steel, and semiconductor cost. These are massive parts of Blue Bird's supply chain and can drive up their cost drastically. And if increased too much, this could make Blue Bird have to change their strategic approach and methods. And then moving into our internal analysis, here's our VIRO chart. And it has 20 resources and capabilities that we were able to identify. And here's the first 10 on this slide, and then our other 10 on this slide. And then I've just pulled a couple of key strengths and weaknesses from these that I thought were worth sharing. First, Blue Bird has deep roots in the industry with over 95 years in business, and long-standing relationships with school districts. This has created a strong barrier of entry, as we saw in the Five Forces model, and this sets them up internally with the power to move with changes in the industry, since they already have the manufacturing structure for it, and it also allows them to maintain steady revenue streams. One weakness, however, is that they haven't had as much time to build up their EV infrastructure and relationships. So while Blue Bird is a strong name in the bus industry overall, then it's still anybody's game in the EV sector. So it'll be crucial for them to continue rapidly building up this area of their business to stay ahead of the curve.
I'm really excited. I'm going to talk to you guys about the SWOT analysis for Blue Bird Corporation. And the great thing about Blue Bird is they really focus on what they do best, and what they do best is producing school buses. So that's what they mostly produce and manufacture is school buses, and they actually lead the U.S. in the school bus market with an operating margin of 11.9%, which is the best within the industry. Because of that focus with it, because of that ability to master what they've created, which is school buses, they really have a set goal of safety, reliability, and durability, which is very much seen with the products that they produce. The 3-point seatbelt safety innovation was a really big thing for them that they were able to put into their buses, and they have really positive relationships with government and school districts because of the fact that they are specific to school buses, and obviously schools are buying school buses, and so they have really positive relationships with districts all across America. I would say with their weaknesses, they have because of the school bus, because they only make school buses or mostly make school buses, they have a very heavy dependency on those. And so in the case of a market for school buses going downhill, they're really putting all their eggs in one basket for school buses. The EV components, that was a strength that I maybe missed on the strengths, was that they have a really good focus on EVs, propane and gas. So they're not just doing regular fuel gas, but they're doing propane and EV as well. But with that, I would say that there's a lot of cost to that focus of going from propane and gas to now going into EV buses. They do have a limited diversification. As we mentioned, they don't really do a whole lot outside of educational transport. They really focus mostly on that, and so because of that lack of diversification, they're just one bad hit away from potentially falling short in the market. They do have a lot of sensitivity to tariffs and supply chain distribution, just because of government policies that can definitely bang them up a little bit in their ability to produce. Now, some of their opportunities to grow and to build is, so the government is willing to give $5 billion plus to building and producing clean bus funding. So if they're looking to really look into EV and alternative fuel buses, the government is seeing that as a positive, and so they're looking to fund those projects. So going into that or looking into grants or money funding from the government would be really positive for them, opportunity. The aging U.S. fleets replacement demand. So right now there's a lot of old buses, and the good thing with Blue Bird is they last a long time. The problem is that they've lasted so long that now schools are replacing a lot of their fleets, their school bus fleets, because of how old their buses are getting. There are fantastic adjacent markets like shuttles and transit. So if they were to want to move away from like school buses, there's city transportation, there's shuttle transportation. There's a lot of opportunities for growth for their business. And then obviously EVs are the market for EV vehicles is growing, and so that's always going to be an opportunity for Blue Bird to get into that market for electric vehicles. And then also V2G and the smart fleet management systems is a great way for them to grow. Now, for threats for them, Thomas built an IC bus parent-backed rivalries. So it's one of those things where they have strong competitors. Even though Blue Bird is one of the best brands for buses in the business, there are still two companies behind them that are very competitive and very strong that are coming right up to them. Another threat is high school bargaining. So it's kind of hard because schools are only going to be able to pay how much they can pay for a bus, and So school buses are going to be really they're really important, but they're also really expensive for a budget. And so there's a lot of area where the schools have more power because they're the ones that are there. I mean, if you're producing school buses, schools are the ones buying your buses. And so they're the ones who have the power because they're the customer, the consumer, and they maybe just don't get as much funding as they could to afford more expensive buses. There are right now, just because of current infrastructure for our cities and for our roads, EV charging is kind of limited just because there's only so many spaces. And with that in mind, there's also limited space for a giant bus to fit inside of a place to be able to recharge your bus, your battery bus, or bus's battery. And then again, supply chain instabilities can be a really big problem, especially with current tariff and trade problems that the world is going through.
Based on the SWOT analysis, Blue Bird faces several key challenges that could affect its future growth and success. Number one is their dependence on the school bus market. Blue Bird relies heavily on school district purchases, which are largely funded by the government. Changes in budgets or funding could reduce demand and impact sales. The company's limited presence in other transportation markets also increase this risk. Number two would be challenges with the transition to electric vehicles. As the demand for electric school buses continue to grow, Blue Bird must keep investing in new technology while also maintaining the high cost of batteries and charging infrastructure along with their current vehicles that they already have. If these challenges are not managed well, they could slow the company's growth. Number three would be supply chain and rising costs. Blue Bird depends on importing materials and components to build its buses. Rising costs, tariffs, labor shortages, and supply chain disruptions could increase production expenses and make it extremely harder to meet customer satisfaction. And number four would be growing competition. So Blue Bird competes with large manufacturers that are continuing to invest in new technology and alternative fueling systems. At the same time, school districts have limited budgets and they are able to compare multiple options before making a purchase. Blue Bird must continue to stand out from its competitors while maintaining their profitability. Based on these challenges, I have identified 4 different recommendations that could help Blue Bird continue to grow and stay competitive. So first, it's to expand into other transportation markets. Blue Bird should continue to grow and expand beyond the traditional school bus system by increasing its presence in things like commercial shuttles or public transportation, specialty transportation markets. This would help reduce its dependence on school districts and the variation that they have with their budgets, and they would be able to create additional sources of revenue. Number 2 would develop a smart fleet management system. So Blue Bird could offer customers a digital platform that tracks vehicle performance, predicts maintenance needs, monitors battery health, especially with the change to these electric vehicles. I think this would be extremely important. And it also helps just manage the efficiency of the school buses. And this would provide a value for the customer and a long-term competitive advantage. Number 3 would be create partnerships to support electric vehicle growth. Partnering with companies that provide charging infrastructure and battery services could help school districts transition to electric buses. This would be easier for them because they might be able to lower costs and have those stronger relationships to help them in the long run. This would ultimately strengthen Blue Bird's position in the growing EV market. And number 4, expand customer support and training services. Blue Bird could offer expanded training programs for drivers, mechanics, school district staff, especially as electric buses become more common. It's kind of an unknown to them that people who have never driven an electric vehicle might need to learn some changes that come with that. So providing ongoing education and technical support would strengthen customer relationships, increase customer loyalty, and help school districts feel more confident adopting new technology. So overall, I think these recommendations would help Bluebird continue to grow and adapt as the transportation industry changes.
Implementation is phased across 3 different horizons. We have short term, which is we want to build the EV ecosystem partnerships and begin fleet management, research and development. That would just be all sorts of different things, from making a more EV bus, which is a different strategy that we have. And then medium term, we would like to launch the software platform and grow adjacent markets, which would mean just growing our platform to different horizons of tech instead of maybe even just buses, more than school buses, maybe a community bus or some type of situation there. And the long term, we would like to transform Bluebird from a bus manufacturer even into maybe a comprehensive sustainable transportation company, because that would bring significant recurring revenue that could profit the business even more than it already has.
Just to kind of conclude my thoughts, or the thoughts to conclude our presentation here, I would say Bluebird holds a strong defensible position within the North American region, especially with buses. And they've been doing buses for a very long time. And so they have a brand that people trust. They are strong. They have strong technical leadership within the bus manufacturing market. And it's really, their distribution is really unmatched overall because of just how strong they are within this market. Financially, they perform very exceptionally because of their ability to have a strong connection with school districts and the government to produce school buses. They have a 15% EBITDA margin, and that just is larger than parent-backed competitors like we mentioned earlier in this presentation. With the new wave of electric vehicles, there's a lot of potential, a lot of growth. I believe Bluebird they've been putting aside funds and resources to work on their electric vehicle options or their other alternative fuel options, which with the $5 billion the government is saying they're going to fund these projects with, that's just going to help them excel in that department, and they're going to be able to see big margin, big growth in that opportunity. And then to close completely, by extending into these adjacent markets or launching new fleet technology, they're just going to be able to compete a lot more and be more sustainable to be able to sustain a more competitive advantage in the market. As the market changes, it seems as though that Bluebird is ready to change, and they're prepared to compete with the changing market into more elite EV technologies or just other alternative fuels as well. And so that was kind of our presentation over Bluebird Corporation, and I hope that you were able to find something that you enjoyed about this presentation and take it and go for something awesome.